I have a theory. I have a really big theory.
Okay.
All I ask is for a little bit of patience.
Okay.
I was working on it until about like 3 to 4 a.m. last night.
Yeah.
And then I worked on it again to make sure it was a little bit more interesting and easier to digest. So bear with me. It's all on my phone. I wrote it all out. First, I want to say how much I love this mysterious structure on Elbaf. We're witnessing world building unfold right before our eyes. Naturally, this sparks countless theories, and I have one that I believe will blow all of your minds. In this chapter, chapter 1144, we are introduced to a scientific building on Elbaf, one with no recorded history among the giants. Unlike any other Elbaf structures, this building stands as an anomaly. When Lilith examines it, she estimates that it is at least 3,000 years old. What does that mean? To understand its significance, we must revisit the historical framework of One Piece. The world's history is divided into 3 eras: the First World, the Second World, and the Third World. The First World remains a mystery. The Second World was the era of Joy Boy and the formation of the alliance that eventually turned into what we know as the world government. The Third World is the present timeline. Each era has its own legacy. But what if I told you that this scientific building on Elbaf is a relic from the First World? And even more mind-blowing, what if the story of the First World was already told to us during the Alabasta arc? But we overlooked it. Let's revisit chapter 203. Crocodile demands that Robin reveal what she deciphered from the poneglyph beneath Alabasta. She tells him about Alabasta's history, but when Crocodile presses her for information about the ancient weapon Pluton, she claims there is no mention of it. However, 805 chapters later, in chapter 1053, we learn that Robin lied. Pluton was mentioned. While she concealed Pluton's location from Crocodile, she had no reason to fabricate Alabasta's historical records. And this is where things get interesting. Robin reads from the poneglyph. Kahida was conquered by Alabasta. That was in the year of Heaven 239. This is crucial. Kahida was the civilization that existed before Alabasta overtook it. When did this event occur? There are only 2 known calendar systems in One Piece: the Age of the Sea Circle and the Age of Heaven. Montblanc Nolan's logbook, written 400 years ago, confirms that the Age of the Sea Circle is the current calendar system. This means that before the Void Century and Joy Boy's time, the world followed the Age of Heaven calendar system. Now, here's where it all connects. In chapter 188, a soldier casually states that the Alabasta Palace has existed for 4,000 years, meaning it predates the world government and even the ancient kingdom. If the palace has existed for 4,000 years and the scientific building on Elbaf has been standing for 3,000 years, then we have undeniable proof that these relics belong to the First World. Here's where the theory deepens. The rest of Robin's reading leads us to something even bigger. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, talk to me.
I believe I have uncovered the name of the first user of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika Devil Fruit. Robin's next translation states, in the year of 260, Tamir of the Bitten dynasty took the throne. If Kahida was conquered in the Age of Heaven, that means the civilizations that time did not structure themselves as kingdoms, but as dynasties. Here's the key connection. There is only one other character in One Piece associated with a dynasty. Do you guys know who that is?
Off the top of my head now.
Imu of the Norona dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
This suggests that Imu isn't just 900 years old, but is actually thousands of years old, potentially originating from the First World, just like Tamir of the Bitten dynasty. Robin continues, the Great Taf of Eromalu was completed in the year 306. Considering that Alabasta was now ruled by the Bitten dynasty, it's likely that they introduced structures similar to the ancient Egyptian tombs. The Great Taf could have been a burial site for kings and queens, built using enslaved labor, much like real-world pyramids. This aligns with the narrative that the first world was plagued by slavery, as we were told that mankind succumbed to greed and touched the forbidden sun before the enslaved prayed for salvation. Hence, why the sun god appeared. Now, let's look at Robin's final translation. She says, in the year 325, the great hero of Ultia, Mamudin, before she gets cut off by crocodile when Pluton isn't mentioned. This is where my theory reaches its peak. The Hito Hito no Mi Maro Nika wasn't simply inherited. It was born from the dreams of the oppressed. Devil fruits manifest from the desires of people, meaning that before Nika existed, the concept of freedom had to be desperately wished for. Therefore, Nika was never a real person. He was an idea. If there was an era where slavery was rampant, then it makes perfect sense that the slaves' collective yearning for liberation gave rise to the Nika devil fruit. And who was the first to eat this fruit? Mamudin, the great hero of Ultia, who was mentioned by Robin. If we break down the name Mamudin, it sounds strikingly similar to Haruden, the illegitimate prince of Elbaf. If Ultia was a village on Elbaf similar to Haugen, then this suggests something groundbreaking. The first Nika user was a giant. This would explain why a massive straw hat exists in Marijoa, locked away where only Emu recognizes its significance. If Emu has first-hand knowledge of who originally wore that hat, it could confirm that they have existed since the First World's time period. To bring this theory all the way back around to the building on Elbaf, the reason there are no historical records on it, even though it's 3,000 years old, is the same reason why we do not have any information about Tamir and the Bitten dynasty. It's because the world government during the Void Century destroyed all history. That's why it's the Void Century. It took them 100 years to cleanse whatever they could find. Robin's poneglyph reading under Alabasta also proved that the ancient weapon Pluton was created during the First World as well. Here's my conclusion to this theory. The First World of One Piece used the Age of Heaven calendar system instead of the current Age of the Sea Circle system. During this era, civilizations didn't form kingdoms, they established dynasties. Kahira was conquered by Alabasta, which was then ruled by Tamir of the Bitten dynasty. After Tamir's passing, the next monarch enslaved the people to build grand tombs for their royal bloodline. This period of widespread slavery was crucial because it birthed a legend. The oppressed dreamed of a warrior who would free them, Nika, the liberator. But here's the truth. Nika never existed. The worldwide collective will of the slaves gave birth to the first ever devil fruit, the Hito Hito no Mi Maro Nika, and the first person to eat it, a giant named Mamudin from Ultia, a now lost village on Elbaf. Mamudin traveled the world freeing slaves until he reached Alabasta, where he ended the Bitten dynasty. This paved the way for the Nefeltari family to rule. Emu was part of the dynasty from the First World too. This means they knew Mamudin personally. After Mamudin's fall, Emu hid his massive straw hat beneath Marijoa, viewing it as a relic of the past. It would also explain why there's a building on Elbaf that has no historical records. The Void Century was a time of erasure, and the need to prevent the ancient weapons like Pluton from being created once again, endangering the world. This changes everything. The true origins of Nika and the Void Century might go far deeper than we ever imagined. What do you think?
You know what's crazy is that today I was reading something very similar to what you were reading in the beginning. When I was there, so I was looking up ors and O'Hara and the history. I came across when you mentioned like the eras, the era of the calendar. And then I was reading this. I was like, oh snap, very kind of color. But I was too tired to even go anywhere deep as you did. So I like that you went that deep, and I like the theory. I don't know why it fits so much Nika being a giant. Like, for example, him not existing, but the fruit manifesting, because it seemed like Oda is kind of going that route. It could go either or, but the fact that either or the first one was a giant, because it goes into the lore of why they think the ancient warrior, because the ancient warrior they're talking about is not Joy Boy, you know, the one that they see. It's going back to Elbaf's, and they always link it to Elbaf's mythology and Elbaf's warrior. If he wasn't a giant, it wouldn't be the same. Yeah, he could be friends of giants, but the fact that they kind of claim that Nika was one of their own. So it makes sense that the first one who awakened that fruit is a giant, and I don't know why it fits so much when Luffy actually goes full giant and Nika for it. It kind of feels like that's the way it was, or it's so used to, like, you could kind of do anything in that form. I like the theory that you're breaking down so far. It's dope.
I love it. And I mostly love it because I know it forced you to go back and read them panels on Alabasta. Because I don't know if y'all know this, but Larry is like Alabasta was alright kind of guy. When I told him from jump, it's the quintessential One Piece arc. That is the arc that not only explains all of One Piece, but is the epitome of what every major One Piece conflict looks like. Scale, fighting, determination, Luffy losing, all that. So, like, I'm glad you was able to go back and reappreciate one of One Piece's best and now most underrated arcs, in my opinion. But as far as the theory goes, I loved it. I did.
You.
I gotta go back and read those because I haven't reread Alabasta in years. I remember, and I'm feeling dumb because I'm remembering the Age of Heaven, like Lawrence was talking about, and what you were just talking about. And I'm like, duh, this thing is predated by a lot of stuff in One Piece based off the calendars. I gotta go back and read, because I think most people, myself included, when they heard Robin reading all that, and then Crocodile kind of brushed it, you're lying to me. They kind of just put it at the end of their mind. But that's still information that Robin had that either she got from that poneglyph or from some other poneglyph that was probably still true. She didn't make it up. If this is the history that has been used with poneglyphs even, or just history that she knows in general, like it's something that happened in the One Piece world that she had knowledge of. I'm with it, bro. I really like the concept of Nika not existing for real either. And it being, because like you said, there was an entire age of slavery. If devil fruits are spawned in the way that Vegapunk has theorized, why wouldn't there be this entity that was created because of the beliefs of people? And it could easily just be Nika. Even Who's Who, when he first brought it in, like, the whole point was, does this person actually exist? Like, I like that even the origins of where we first learned about the name, it's been shrouded in this, does this person actually exist? And even beyond that, if it is this religious figure that it's always been, there's always been this, like, in the real world, does God really exist? Does Jesus really exist? Etc. So, like, for Oda to take that example, potentially, and even incorporate that into it, like, the actual belief in this. And then you have the government's powers trying to prevent people from learning, and, you know, like, I like all of that. As far as the names and, like, who the first person was, and Mamudin, yeah. I gotta go back and reread to remember, because even in the chat I was telling people like where Larry was getting the information from. I'm like, yo, even me, this is all very faint from just a couple scenes from Robin talking. So I'm like, yo, I haven't reread that in a long time. I love it though. I love it, bro. I do.
It actually made me think too. It's very rare that we fully get the readings of the poneglyphs as if Robin didn't. It's kind of like she reads it on her own, but she holds it inside. She doesn't read it out loud. I guess we're probably gonna get that towards the end, or doesn't want to give too much away. It made me think of going back to what Robin read there, and then what it's even a little bit the red poneglyphs, and back what Vegapunk said, putting it together to see what we get from that.
Even Crocodile's response, I don't care about this kingdom's history. Like, it's so funny. Like, that was me, low key, when I was reading it. When I was watching that episode, I was like, yo, bro, shut up. Let's get to it. But now, knowing what it is, what it could be, what it could represent, shoot. Let's go reread Alabasta, y'all, as a group.
I don't think we need to read everything.
Yes, we do.
Maybe just that.
Yes, we do.
Because it's a lot.
I will point out this, right? It seems to be like history is repeating itself. If the first world had a Nika user and a giant robot, everybody's like, the second world is like, oh, Joy Boy and Emmett. And then the third world is like Luffy and Frankie. So if we look at it in this instance, we could do the same thing for the Nika user and a Nefertari member. So in the first world, Mamudin, who was probably the first Nika user, linked up with a Nefertari, and then they ended up ruling after the Bitten dynasty ended. We go into the second world, Joy Boy meets Nefertari Lily, and he changes her perspective on life, basically, and they end up doing whatever they did, right? And then in the third world, we have Luffy and Nefertari Vivi. History is repeating itself as well, and I think that also works with Vegapunk. So if we're talking about this scientific structure that's older than 3,000 years, and it was during the first world, well, then that means that somebody during the second world had Vegapunk's devil fruit, because he's only 68 and this was 900 years ago. And then even before that, somebody probably had his devil fruit first. And this is why there's always been one technologically advanced civilization throughout all these time periods. And it was always because of this one person in particular. Everything's in threes, right?
I agree, because also too, I've always thought it was interesting matching up with the what we read in the Muro, right? And with Vegapunk's speech, it talked about how so robust was the ancient kingdom. And I always thought it was interesting, but what we read in the three worlds is that a lot of the worlds were enslaved by this thing. But then if you read in that word, it talked about how, I forgot how it's worded, but it made me think of rising to power. I kind of feel like you're mentioning, while they're being repressed, it's like they're building up strength to attack, like we kind of saw in what we see now with Dragon. You know, the whole world's being repressed, but you have an army building up strength to attack the world government. So then now, finally, when they came into a thing, you have this robust team leaded by Joy Boy with Emmett and the ancient weapons, to attack. So I think that's what kind of happened here. And it's kind of like now we're seeing something similar where Luffy is low-key building up his army and his father is building another army were to attack the world government. And now they have Vegapunk on their side, too, building stuff. So I kind of feel like it connects, like you said, it's repeating itself, but on different ways, it's different stages.
There's another part of that theory that I wanted to focus on, and it was the fact that when Robin was reading The Age of Heaven, the year that Kahita was conquered by Alabasta, on that poneglyph as well, it was written that the ancient Pluton was probably amongst them during that time. So that means that the ancient shipwrights from Water 7, that island is also thousands of years old because they're the ones who created Pluton. So if the ancient weapons were already in play during the First World, that means that Joy Boy and Nefertari Lily were probably already dealing with the ancient weapons, and it might have just been an ongoing war about who's going to possess these things. And that was very interesting to me because I was like, I always thought that the ancient weapons went as far back as the ancient kingdom. I thought that they were the ones that possibly created it, but now I'm starting to think that they existed way before the ancient kingdom was even first built. And that's crazy to me. The other interesting part of that theory, we always look at Alabasta as like this reformed country, and they might have never been truly evil. They might have never been a celestial dragon to the T because they backed out from becoming celestial dragons. It kind of says now that they conquered a country.
Yeah.
Like they went up to Kahita and just took over.
Somebody did, yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody in the lineage did at one point.
And they were a part of this Bitten dynasty that no longer exists. Maybe the Bitten dynasty probably left, or they went somewhere else, and they're at Medijoa now.
When dynasties fall, they tend to fall hard, bro.
They tend to fall hard.
They tend to get eradicated.
It would seem that Alabasta probably had Bitten dynasties within them. It proves that Alabasta has never been always a good people. And that started to change my mind about who they are as a people, and that's why they wanted to join the alliance. Maybe the world government was sort of evil, but they also knew like the ancient weapons were such an issue that they might have been the lesser of two evils in their minds.
If this war, for where we're gathering, obviously is lasting hundreds or maybe even thousands of years. The group before Lily was there, or her parents or her family, right? They were allied with the future celestial dragons, right? But then when Lily comes up, she has a different mindset. She has more of a mindset similar to that of Vivi and Cobra, and wanting her to back up. But their family ties were like, no, what are you talking about? We've been together. The family ties, it could be the fact that why Emu is so attached to her is that promise to each other because of their family ties. But then she's like, no, I disagree. I actually agree with, the D clan members.
Yeah.
So she backs out. It could be that way, because usually when family ties together, you marry into royalty and you marriage alliances. That's the thing. We see that heavily with Big Mom's crew and everything.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of interesting too because when we look at it in a One Piece perspective, if Kahita was conquered by Alabasta and then Alabasta came out with the Bitten dynasty and the Bitten dynasty fell because Mamudin came through and released them, and then the Nefertari family came after and started ruling after Alabasta, it would kind of be like Doflamingo on Dressrosa. He ended up taking over Dressrosa. And then the Nika user during this time ended up defeating him. And then Dressrosa ended up going to the Riku family, which was a better ruling monarchy than the previous.
Right.
And that kind of fits what Alabasta and Nefertari Vivi might have been, where, Joy Boy came through and just fixed things, or Mamudin came through and fixed things for Alabasta during that point. Oda is a genius, dog. Like, how does he have this much information?
Alabasta was like written 30 years ago.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? This is kind of crazy. Kind of crazy, man. My takeaway is go reread Alabasta. That's my biggest takeaway from the theory. But I thought it was great.